The future's a black highway at night. It's the 90s. With a post-80s Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton as a bad bitch, and Edward Furlong as the latchkey poster boy. It's the 90s. And the shapeshifter, the Terminator, the villain from the future is a cop. It's the 90s. And Judgment Day is around the corner.
You know, there's not a lot of movies that you can say, that you can look at specifically, point at and say, this thing changed cinema. But James Cameron's Terminator 2 Judgment Day is definitely one of those movies where it just, piggybacking on the technology of his earlier film, The Abyss, from I think it was 89, taking that technology basically almost like a practice for everything that would come to play in this sequel. It's really amazing because films got bigger, bolder. CGI became something that would become a tool that, for better or worse, would be become the main focus of cinematic special effects. I think it's an incredible film, but in a weird way, it's just a bigger, more expensive, and in some ways blustier version of the first film. There's nothing new here narratively, but what is on screen is so incredible that even 30 some odd years later, as I watch it, I'm blown away at how great everything is on that screen. It's even watching it in my small living room on my 50-inch TV, which is nothing compared to seeing it in a movie theater. It really is a miracle of late 80s, early 90s cinema. And I got to commend James Cameron for having the balls to really take a chance on technology that was nowhere near where it should have been in order to make this. It really is a technological accomplishment, but it's in service of a film that the blueprint had already been seen 7 years earlier with the Terminator. It's kind of weird because I'm conflicted as a movie lover and as a critic of what we do on these shows every week. There's a part of me that critically wants to say there's nothing new here, but at the same time knowing this is absolutely groundbreaking. So I think that's one angle that I want to talk about this film from, in addition to the performances and the sure-footed handling of James Cameron as a director after the original Terminator, after Aliens and The Abyss, that he could conjure this kind of thing out of his mind and realize it. I think it might be the most perfect science fiction special effects film ever produced. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't have its faults. Here and there are problems with it. But for the most part, Jesus Christ, it's an unforgiving thrill ride. And watching it again last night after, I don't know, probably a decade, I felt like I was, 15 years old again. So that being said, I'm really interested in hearing your impression of this.
It's crazy to have just seen these back to back because I've done it before, but it's been such a long time. The first one especially now, feels like, I mean, they both do, but the first one even more so feels like you're really going back in time. Because it feels like the 80s. It feels dark, gritty. It has a nostalgia to it. It's got a bleakness to it mixed with some 80s sentimentality, and the big hair and all that. And it's a smaller film, but it just feels like it really has the doom and gloom. And it's a better film. We talked about this with the special effects, because they look even more dated than the special effects we're going to talk about here for part 2. It gives it's actually a plus for me, because it just feels that much older and it feels more strange and more scary somehow. Whereas this one, early 90s, it's more light, more glossy. It's got the real 90s effect of it, I think, is Edward Furlong and his dialogue, his vibe. Other than, and we'll get into that fast, but other than that, I feel like this is, it's like a soup. When you go to a fucking McDonald's or whatever fucking place you go to, and it's like you just get a supersize.
Yeah.
And you just ask yourself, and you eat it, and you eat it all, and you would have been fine with the regular size, and you actually would be better off, because you'd be fucking like, and I'm not talking about health effects and supersize me and all that Spurlock and all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the idea that we're going to take it for granted that we're going to eat like shit, and we're doing that. And you would have been satiated with a regular meal, like the regular size, and you got the combo. So you got the fucking burger, you got the fucking fries, and you got the drink. But you didn't do that. You had to get the fucking supersize. And you got it.
And the shake. You got the shake as well. So it's like, fat fuck.
And they still had peanuts back then. You weren't allergic, so you live, And, okay, whatever. But the point is that you got it all. And, and you fucking ate it, and you're kind of like, why did I fucking do that? I don't feel nauseated after having watched this movie the way I potentially would be after getting the fucking supersized combo. But I'm like, did I need the fucking supersize? Did I need Terminator 2? I don't think so. And given that, we only did the Terminator, and we only did Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Yeah. We're not going into fucking Terminator 9 fucking whatever. We haven't even, like, at some point, if we decide that we're going to do that, fine. But we're sticking to the basic menu here. And I just feel that it is an avenue or a venue for fucking for the special effects, and it is a wild ride, and it is like, oh shit, like, okay, what's gonna happen, blah blah blah, and it is an intense final stretch, and it does fuck you up a little bit to see Arnold Schwarzenegger get fucked up, and you're like, fuck, how's he coming back from that? I mean, I know he's going to, because I've seen Indiana Jones. I know what happens when someone's getting fucked up, like they figure it out. But all that being said, I'm just like, I'll take, and I don't want to necessarily make this about the first one versus the second one, because the second one, although I don't think it needed to be made, I think it it does what a sequel does, which is like, okay, we're gonna give you another version of this, but it's different enough because now you're gonna think that the villain from the first one is the villain from the second one, but oh shit, he's actually here to help.
Yeah.
Okay. So it does enough, you know what I mean? Like, that's what a sequel is supposed to do. And I think also, like, a sequel is supposed to not be as good as the first one unless it's Godfather 2. Other than that, it's like the sequel is not really meant to outdo the first one. It's to, in a way, complement the first one and elaborate on what the first one did in a way that's similar enough but different enough to stand out on its own. So it does that. I just think that it does that, and it's like, okay, even though the first one is action, etc., and if I'm going to be snobby and I'm going to try to use these terms as a way to distinguish, I think people will understand what I mean, even though what I'm saying is kind of, the way I'm doing it is kind of bullshit. The first one, I think, is more of a film, and the second one is more of a movie.
Within the parlance of what we do and the way we talk about movies, I understand that perfectly. But the original film is low budget, Roger Corman-esque, B movie kind of, just it's
Right.
It's like USA Up All Night tripe kind of shit that is, and we described it as being better than it has any right to be. It's a better film than it deserves to be, and I think it's because the ideas are bigger, and James Cameron has such a dictatorial and demanding directing style, and I'm basing a lot of that on reports from, Ed Harris still won't talk, 30 years later, still won't talk about what happened on the set of The Abyss. And Ed Harris is a pretty tough guy from all accounts, but, there's that. I look at this film and I see, let's just look at it realistically. The original film was maybe $6 to $8 million budget. Very, very, very raw, very primitive in its realization. There's a lot of cheating of the special effects in the way that's necessary in order to make special effects look realistic. A lot of shooting against back screen. The almost Ray Harryhausen creation of the Terminator at the end, which I still crazy as all hell, but it still looks like Ray Harryhausen, Jason and the Argonauts, and that kind of thing. Everything is so much more cleaned up, polished, and beautiful in this film that it was weird. I was talking to this woman I'm seeing, and I asked her if she had ever seen the Terminator. She's Eastern European, so she was like, she thinks she has. And she was like, well, I don't know. There's two movies, right? And I said, yeah, there's two movies. I was like, which one have you seen? She said, I think I've seen the Terminator. And I said, what did you think? And she was like, I was really blown away by it, but I was a kid. I was so young. I was like, well, what do you remember about it? And she was just like, the visuals, the explosions, the stunts, and I'm still on the fence trying to figure out which one has she seen. And then it just occurred to me, ask a simple question. Is there a kid in the version you saw? And she was like, yeah, there was a kid, which, boom, clicked. You didn't see the original film, which I don't think you have to. Although if you haven't, then you're missing out on something pretty spectacular, because it's the setup of this world, and I think it does beautiful. Go back and listen to last week's episode before. Please, I hope if you're listening to these episodes, you're listening to last week's episode first before you dive into this one, because the admiration that we had for that original film is very strong. It's very it's both nostalgic, but it's also, I think, a very, I think it's a very professional look at the film, which is kind of interesting because you and I, when you start going through the 1980s, you talk about First Blood, the Rambo series, you talk about the Terminator series, you talk about Die Hard, the three basic tentpole action films of the 1980s into the 1990s, and all three of these films were still active into the early 2000s. That's what's crazy, is that the stories are there for continuing the series, sometimes beautifully, sometimes obvious cash grabs. But there is a nostalgia there that I don't know if you feel the same way that I do, but there are certain aspects where I wonder, where I ask myself, am I being too easy on this film because it holds such a great memory? Do you ever have that, like, you know what I mean?
I have that. We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
I have that for fucking like 40 years of fucking shit. And I don't mean like 40 years from when I was born, from when I was a little boy to now. 40 plus years of being alive. I mean, not like shit from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. I have different forms of nostalgia for those different things. So forget the fucking 25 years, like from 2000 on to where we're at now, like, which I don't particularly have a lot of nostalgia for. Like the nostalgia that I have for shit from the 60s is because I was absorbing all that stuff when I was a teenager. Same with the 70s, 80s because I was already alive, and then 90s because I had one foot in the contemporary in the 90s, and then I had one foot in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
So it was for me very strange. So I have like, and I'm sure, and I know like a lot of my friends have something similar because we were listening to the same records, but still listening to the contemporary tapes and CDs, all at the same time. And I think there was a sense, and I've talked about this and I'll continue to talk about this, there was a sense of like the past that was still getting talked about, while still talking about the present. You know what I mean? And so like, when it comes to stuff like this, like here you can have nostalgia for for the same series, but two different decades with two different feels. And it is literally like night and day, because Terminator, the first one, is very much a nocturnal film. Mm-hmm. Most of it is at night, or it seems to be at night. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one, most of it is during the day. And the idea of like, am I going too easy on it because of the nostalgia factor? I don't know. I mean, I think when I look back on the first film, I do ascribe all this nostalgia to it. That I don't necessarily think that that I had at an earlier period, or maybe as I get older, I'm putting more nostalgia on it as I go. Like, if I watch it in 5 years, am I gonna fucking like it even more? Whereas Terminator 2, I don't feel that. What I do feel, though, interestingly, is that I ascribe more nostalgia to Edward Furlong than I do to the film.
Well, that's interesting.
Up with Edward Furlong.
Yeah. You guys are about the same age. When did you say?
We're basically he's a little bit old. He's like maybe a year older. So like, it was this. It was Brain Scan, this fucking B movie about a killer video game, basically, or like I don't know if you've seen it.
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very fucking B fucking movie. You guessed it, 1994. So it was like in the fucking rotation, like left and right.
Yeah.
American History X.
Mm-hmm.
And then Animal Factory was probably like the last thing that I saw him in.
I mean, that's the last thing most people saw him in.
Right.
To be honest, brutally honest about that. Yeah.
Which I don't think is like. Hopefully, no one has nostalgia about that. But it's just one of those things that it's like when I think back on filmographies, you have like one chain is like, okay, the Edward Furlong chain, and it's obviously much shorter in terms of like notable shit. The Schwarzenegger stuff, like, there's 80s Schwarzenegger, which is fucking Terminator,
mm-hmm.
Conan, Predator, The Running Man, Commando, all of that shit. And then once you start getting into post him being like huge, he was still huge, but it's like a different kind of buff. That's when you get into the Terminator 2 fucking True Lies and all that. Like, I don't have nostalgia for fucking the 90s for True Lies. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I just don't. And whereas, like, I do have nostalgia for The Running Man.
Okay.
So it is. I think it's very subjective and it's very arbitrary, because someone out there is going to be like, "Oh fuck, True Lies, like that was my shit." Like, fuck it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
And that's just how it is, and that's cool, because it's like, oh shit, like this whole other fucking world is opening up to someone because fucking Jamie Lee Curtis is in it, and fucking Tom Arnold isn't trying to stick his finger up fucking Edward Furlong's ass in that movie. He's fucking some other guy, you know? And that was an Animal Factory.
Yeah.
That's anyone
just got pussy coming to me, yeah.
What'd you say?
Just got pussy coming to me. It's so weird to me because I'm sitting here watching this film and I'm listening to everything that you're saying, and I think you're kind of missing something though. Is that when you look at
I'm missing something?
Yeah, just
about part two?
No, not about part two. About the movie watching experience and the way they shit. Because we're old men at this point. Let's be honest. We're you're in your 40s. I'm going into my 50s, and we don't. Like, we look at those formative years when you were listening and watching the shit you were watching. I was doing the same thing with the shit I was watching. But I think there's a huge difference in a Terminator or a Terminator 2 being created and being experienced as it's occurring, versus you and I going into the archives and finding shit like a Taxi Driver or a Raging Bull or the Wild Bunch, or digging deeper into the history of cinema, because in a weird way, as elitist as we are, and all all movie all movie nerds or comic book nerds or sports nerds, I feel like we find something that we think makes us unique because we were the ones out there finding it, where it is definitely rarer to find guys like us who are discovering this shit, but it does exist. Now, there's a huge difference in experiencing this versus that first time I saw Taxi Driver, or that first time that I saw The Wild Bunch. When you look at Terminator 2, this is something that is grabbing hold of society as a whole, the culture. This is culturally changing. That's what I mean when I talk about Terminator 2. Number one, you really have the establishment of Arnold Schwarzenegger. People think that Schwarzenegger has always been famous. Well, nobody has always been famous. There was Conan. Then there was, I'm not sure if he did this. Yeah, he did Conan. Then he did this. Then he did the Terminator. Yeah. Then I think somewhere he did Commando. Then he would do Predator. And then he would come back to this. So he was already becoming this powerhouse and going toe-to-toe with Stallone, challenging everything that Stallone was, because Stallone had already had Rocky and the first Rambo film, First Blood, and probably Rambo First Blood Part 2 around the time that, around the time of Predator. So you had that battle of the muscleheads, you know, and that's what if you remember our defining the 80s series, that's the thing that took predominance in my assessment of that decade. It was action, meathead, bullets galore filmmaking, and a period where subtlety was no longer really available in cinema. It was brutality. It was a higher body count. It was bigger weapons. It was blood on the screen, and how much violence they could get away with that was basically just killing. And even this film is kind of commenting on that. We'll get into that. But I think there's something about this. Yeah, you know. But this is something that is different in a way that it's existing. We're alive during the making of it. We're not discovering something. We're being overwhelmed by something that is washing over us. If you were a movie fan, I to tell you the truth, if you were a teenage boy or a preteen boy in the late 80s, early 90s, I don't know how you could have not seen this film. You would have that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? It's like, the point is, I don't think you would have been able to escape the wave that Terminator 2 was. Everybody saw this movie. You had to see this movie. And you had to see this movie just so that you could go to school the next day and talk about it and be blown away by it. And I say it with a certain level of nostalgia, because I remember how it felt when everybody was on the same page about how cool a thing could be. This shit was overwhelming. This was not only groundbreaking technologically, but we were seeing something on the movie screen that would change it forever. We would never see movies the same way, and we would never watch them the same way as we did before Terminator 2. It changed the fucking game. It really did.
I get that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like the nostalgia element of it, like people were like, "Oh, that was fucking super cool," but I don't remember, like, it wasn't like people were like, "Oh my god, this fucking," and obviously film critics and all this and that could say that because they were like, they had enough perspective to see that. But I don't remember like the street saying like, "Fuck, this changed cinema. This is something different. Like this feels different." It was just another fucking action movie, is what it felt like, even though it was like cool.
Oh, I never felt that. I felt like, but well, yeah. You say the street wasn't saying it. I don't think the street was saying it. I think at the back of our heads, I think it's the kind of thing that you can only look back at and see. You can't read it at the time. I think years later.
You're making the argument that it's like, it's one thing when you go into the fucking archives and you're digging it out, you're gonna like that more. But on the other hand, it's like, don't discount the power of like when you're in the moment and stuff is like watching over you. Sure, I agree, but then it's like, then you have to look at it from like the future. To understand I understand that too, but I think all of those things, I don't think there's any conflict between all of those things. I just think it does go back to it being fucking like very, in a sense, arbitrary, because it's like, just because something changes the game, look at fucking what James Cameron's done with fucking with Avatar. Yeah. I mean, he moves shit forward. I remember, and I was old enough, and those of us who were old enough probably did hear people say, this technology is going to change cinema, and this is a blah, blah, blah. And I heard that before I saw the movie, and I went and I saw the movie, and I said, fuck this movie.
Yeah, but were you dismissive of the technology? Because, see, I said double fuck this movie. As bad as you fuck that movie, double fuck this movie. Fuck this. I hated every second of it. I hated the fact that you made me go see it again. And I hold that. I hold that to you. I hold you in contempt for forcing me to see the second one. I didn't want to go see it. You made me go see it. I will forever not forgive you for that. But but I can't deny the power that it had as far as the technology that would come. And we talked about this in last week's episode, where it's like, I wish James Cameron still had the power of his storytelling. I just wish he was still a better storyteller and was willing to recognize good stories that were available to him so that the technology would match something that was great. Avatar is shit. It's obvious. It's been done. It's been done so much better. Even fucking Dances with Wolves is better and I don't particularly care for Dances with Wolves, except for a few certain aspects of it, but Dances with Wolves is a better version of Avatar than Avatar could even come close to. The thing with the Terminator is it's an easy film to be dismissive of because it's an action film, because it's a meathead film, because it's a
Terminator 2 or the first one?
Both of them. Both of films are. The first film is uglier and grittier, but that's because of the budget that is involved. And it makes a hell of a difference, just like you said, the night versus day shooting. And even the night shooting on this film looks beautiful compared to the dark grittiness of that shit. Looks like low budget, straight to video shit. It looks like a completely different film. You know how Gordon Willis shot the Godfather's trilogy, and they all look like they could be one movie?
Yeah.
That's completely out the window here.
Of course.
These are two complete, and I think to compare the two, which is, I don't know if it's a cop-out, because in preparing for this discussion, I was going over in my head which is a better film, and I can't really decide which is a better film because I think they're completely different films. I think it's weird because they're the same film. It's the same basic story, but it's James Cameron has a 15 times bigger budget, and he wants you to know that he has a much bigger budget. I mean, he's in your face about it. There is no doubt that he's like, and if you remember, this was the most expensive made film at its time. It was the most expensive film in history up until probably Titanic, a handful of years later, 5 years later, maybe. There had been nothing ever seen. Yeah.
Well, it's not exactly Evil Dead in the sense that it's like, okay, well, this is kind of another version of the same movie.
Mm-hmm.
It is a sequel. The premise of the first one is there is a war between the machines, this AI machines versus humans in the future, and in that war, there is a freedom fighter leader on the human side. In order to prevent the possibility of him defeating the machines send a fucking cyborg assassin to kill that guy's mom. And they sends him into the past. And so the guy himself, he sends a guy into the past to protect his mom. That guy ends up being his dad. So, okay, that mission failed in terms of the Terminator. The part 2 is it's the second attempt. This time it's not against the mother, it's against the actual guy, but as an adolescent. It's years later. Linda Hamilton is in it, obviously older. Schwarzenegger comes back. In the first one, he is the Terminator. In the second one, he is also a Terminator. So you expect, as I said earlier, you're like, oh, fuck. The character's like her, she thinks, oh, fuck, he's back. Or, another version of him is back. This time it's actually a reprogrammed Terminator, reprogrammed by John Connor himself to go back and save himself as a kid. So the audience who has seen part 2, this is the difference. If you haven't seen, you don't need to see part 1 in order to get something in terms of the explosions, the Michael Bay, the fucking, that kind of sensibility from the second one. What you will miss if you don't see the first one is, assuming that you don't know shit about, this is your first time watch. You're not, and you don't know anything about, you don't read about it, nothing. Just watch it. You're going to be like, oh fuck, like, oh shit, he's here to protect him. Okay, and you won't have the baggage of him as this fucking villain. So now it'll change everything. It'll change your whole perspective on this character, even though it's technically like it's a different Cyborg, but there's the continuity element. So now you get attached to him because he's like, oh, this is his fucking C-3PO, but with a gun. All right, cool. If you see the first one and you're like me, you will also be like, oh fuck yeah, the first one's better. The first one just has more atmosphere. The first one just has. This one is
this shit's Disneyland.
This shit, yeah. This shit is just
that first one is the state fair. Broken down, fucking white trash.
Not even the state fair; it's just like the local fair.
Yeah, right? Like the local county, whatever. It's a big difference. This is
county smaller.
What kind of fucking traveling carnivals are you going to? This is you know what I mean. It's upstart. It's fuck OSHA and everybody's on fucking meth, just running those rides. Nobody gives a fuck about safety it's a down and dirty, ugly little film, and that works for it. This is a much different, this is the film, but I gotta say, with James, looking at the career that James Cameron has had, the dictatorial style of his filmmaking based on reports from the sets, this is the film that he always wanted to make. This is the one. This is, in a weird way, this is the director's cut of the story. This is everything that he wanted to do. What's that?
We got lucky that he didn't have the budget for this one.
Yeah.
Originally.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, that first film showed a certain level of inventiveness and being able to work around any kind of limitations. That's why so much of it is at night. It must have been a brutal shoot to shoot all fucking night, because you need to utilize darkness in order to cover up a lot of the limitations of the special effects. He's shooting in the daytime here because he wants you to see everything. And even the nighttime scenes are lit in a way that he wants you to see every dollar on that screen. It's almost like in a weird way, it's almost like it's an ego thing, this film. That's not to say that I don't like it. I still think it's a great film. I still think it's an incredible realization, and it's one of the few sequels that adds something to the story. And although it's unnecessary to a degree, it's unnecessary as far as storytelling. I'll say that. But as far as cinema is concerned, it's everything is up there, and you see it, and you see the potential. And
what does that mean?
Because what I mean is, you're seeing an artist's true vision of what he wants this world to be. There are very few moments in Terminator 2 Judgment Day where you don't think, if you're willing to take that suspension of disbelief, which is very necessary in special effects films, you watch it, and there's a part of you that sells out to it and says, this shit is real. This shit, that looks so fucking real. There's only a couple of moments where you can see that it's not Schwarzenegger, or that's it's not that moment that we talked about last week where he's standing in front of the mirror pulling his eyeball out. Where
it's just fucking like rubber head or whatever.
Yeah. But for that movie and the low budget quality of that movie still works for me. I love that scene. That movie doesn't take me out of it. I mean, that's what we talked about last time. It's not the bat. It's not the Dracula bat where everybody's laughing, where, although they might be, if I saw that in a theater and I saw people start laughing, I'd want to kill everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you just the hipsters, in addition to their other sins against culture, and they need to die. I'm sorry. But that's what I'm saying here is that it's this film is a full realization of what James Cameron had in mind when he originally wrote this film, and he conceptualized it, and he realizing it. I think it's they're two radically different films, and I don't think most people would recognize that.
You don't?
I don't think they do. I think people watch it and they think, well, to tell you the truth, sadly, I think more people have seen Terminator 2 than have seen Terminator. And I think with the existing...
like, that makes sense, because Terminator 2 is like it's more of the shit that you would see.
Mm-hmm.
Terminator, the first one, is like a fucking bag of pornographic magazines that you find in the woods or in the fucking alley or some shit like that. It's like, I mean, especially at this point, and I don't think that it's obscure at all. I just mean it's more obscure than the second, compared to the second one. I think it is more of that. It's like, what the fuck is in that bag? Oh shit, you know what I mean?
What's in the bag?
You in the bag.
What's in the bag?
Yeah, different kind of head, you know. And it's kind of dirty. It a seediness to it, but again, that adds to it. This one is very. It feels almost like the fucking corporate shit that it's fucking attacking.
Mm-hmm.
There's a character named Dyson, he's the director of special projects at Cybernetic Systems Corporation, which Skynet falls under that umbrella. He is ultimately the guy who is going to create the AI that's going to fucking take over the world. And in this one, the idea is that, okay, it's like I said, it's the second attempt at John Connor. So again, two fucking are going to come back in time. This new T-1000 or whatever the fuck it's called, which is this like liquid metal Terminator, and the reprogrammed Arnold Schwarzenegger, who is a fucking like a killer nanny, basically for fucking Edward Furlong. And interestingly, Linda Hamilton's character, and we can get into this as briefly or as extensively as we want, I guess, or you want, whatever, is that she has transformed from this kind of like, what the fuck is happening, like victim in the first one, to now she has all this knowledge about the future, so she's fucking basically crazy. She's institutionalized. She's like transformed from that victim of the first one to this fucking ripped, like, I'm getting ready for the end of the world because I have to fucking like protect my son. So I have to be fucking like ready, guns, ammo, all of that. She sees now this Terminator taking care of her child, and she's like, this is like the father figure that he never had. Because in the first one, his father is the guy who came back in time to protect her. They had sex, she got pregnant, he dies, blah, blah, blah. So to me, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh shit, like this is Edward Furlong being that 90s fucking latchkey kid extraordinaire. It was like, this is the TV. This is Arnold Schwarzenegger is the fucking TV, is a metaphor for the fucking TV. Now it would be for the phone, but back then it's like, that's his fucking MTV. That's his fucking, that's it. That's his fucking TV VCR. That's there to protect him. That it'll never be too busy or too tired, as she describes. So there's that. But there's the fucking Dyson guy who is there to not create vacuums, but fucking to create AI. And there's a moment where they go to fucking, she wants to kill him because if she kills him, she can change the future. Then we'll get into the weird time loop bullshit in this film, but she tries to kill him. They protect him. Her son and the Terminator and the good Terminator protect him because we're learning to not kill in this film. As an ironic take on the first one and the 80s, which is like, okay, we're not going to kill, but we'll fucking shoot people in the kneecaps.
Yeah, we'll cripple them. That's it's a whole lot better.
Yeah, we'll fuck their lives up, but we're not going to kill them. But there's a moment where like men like you, because he's like, how was I supposed to know that? How am I going to know that fucking this shit's going to take over the world? And it reminds you of now these people who are creating AI and all this shit like that, where they're just kind of like these like techno utopians, and these futurists are like, it's going to be fucking amazing. And then the fucking chatbot is a fucking, like in a few hours becomes a Nazi. And
Go back to last week's episode so you can get that reference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just Google Nazi chatbot. Tell ChatGPT to explain it.
Don't get yourself put on a fucking list. But yeah, I get, yeah, you're right. It's
You're already on a fucking list. You're on a list.
God, this movie spirals out of control, doesn't it?
And so she's like, men like you built the hydrogen bomb.
Yeah.
Men like you thought it up. And then she goes into like, it's not only man versus machine. She's like, this is like woman versus machine. This is like nature as feminine versus fucking like, and creative, like biologically, like generative femininity shit. Like I can fucking create life. What the fuck do you do, motherfucker? Like that's how she's talking to him. She's like, all you do is fucking destroy shit with your ego. So it's this crazy contrast, and she's just like ready to go off. And Edward Furlong's like, all right, like, come on, like, let's just be constructive. And this dude's like, I didn't fucking know that creating fucking computers that were smarter than humans could be bad. Sure, so it's interesting to see these dichotomies of like the benign fucking machine versus the killer machine. The benign one is actually reprogrammed by supposedly the guy who's going to save the world. Now, in that whole fucking thing, there's an issue because the idea is that the future's not set. She describes it as a black highway at night.
Mm-hmm.
You can make these turns. You just don't know where you're going. But, so if you start off with, you send a guy who will ultimately be your father. You send that guy back in time to protect your mother. If you do that, the fact is you're sending him back in time to protect your mother from being killed so that you can exist. The fact that you exist means that he must have already gone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But he only goes because you send him, and you only exist because he already went. Does that make sense?
No. What you're saying makes sense in your recognition of it, but it's
yeah.
But this has never been considered one of the great time travel movies in regards of respecting the science.
It's a loop, and I'm not even talking about science. I'm talking about logic.
Yes. This ain't Back to the Future. Back to the Future gets it a little bit better.
The fact that you exist means that the Terminator couldn't kill your mom in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And your father's future would be to die in the past before he was even born.
Okay, so let's take that a little step further. I can't even believe we're fucking doing this, but let's say that you're successful in destroying Skynet and Cyberdyne. Now that you do that, that future no longer exists so that you can't send that back in the first place.
Right. So it's kind of like the grandfather paradox.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you travel back in, are you familiar with this? If you travel back in time to kill your grandfather before your mom is born, would you still exist?
Yeah.
Well, killing your grandfather means that you'll never exist to go back and kill him in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But because you can't go back and kill him, it means he does live, which means he will exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's just this weird paradoxical loop. So it's all about explosions.
It has to be, and the explosions have to be bigger so that you ignore the problems and the paradigms of the fucking time travel. I mean, all of that is there. I have to, in order to enjoy a movie like this, I have to ignore certain inconsistencies in the storytelling and focus on the narrative and the themes of it, which are the dangers of AI, but also certain elements like I didn't think of it until you started talking about reprogramming the T-100, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator. There's a statement there, and I don't know about James Cameron's politics. I can't speak to those. I can't. I don't know if he's an NRA member. I don't know if he's a Hollywood liberal that is like fuck all that. But you could make a statement, and this is where you start reading shit into movies that either are there or are not there. Is it a matter of the weapon being dangerous or the programming, thus the user of the weapon that is dangerous? So guns don't kill people. People kill. Yeah, you know what I mean? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. People using guns kill people. So are Terminators bad, or are they good because if you reprogram it to do this thing, then it's a certain degree of protection? You got to remember, at the end of the movie, the Terminator realizes he has to be destroyed as well in order to lock down a future that doesn't present that danger. There's a certain level of self-sacrifice there, and it's you could argue that it's just a moment to make the hero even more heroic and even more important in the story as a martyr type thing, and to give a certain level of humanity to the character, which I think is kind of interesting throughout the film, is that this is the first time where they talk about how Michael Biehn's character talks about how the Terminator can blend in, and the sweat, the bad breath,
like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, exactly. Blends into society. But in this one, there seems to be a
2025 model.
Yeah, in this film, there seems to be Cameron's inclusion as part of the narrative is that the T-100 can become more human, can learn more, that's starting to ask questions. And he begins to ask questions to the child in order to understand things better. And he makes certain leaps. I understand now why you cry. I just can never do it. It's in a weird way, it's like anthropomorphizing a machine.
It's like a Republican. Like that. I understand that you can cry. I just can't.
I just can't. I'm unable. But like what is it? Like, from your point of view, do you view that as a cheat in order to gain sympathy from an audience and put that character above the T-1000, the Robert Patrick version of the Terminator, or is it a genuine statement being made in the film that AI has the potential to become more like us? There's a lot of paradoxes in this film. There's a lot of things that you have to wonder. What is legitimately servicing science and the betterment of man versus the Mary Shelley Frankenstein story of a creature that becomes out of control, which is what this is.
Sure.
I like that. I mean, I like when there are questions being asked in a film that don't have the answers. And there's a moment where Joe Morton, the Dyson character, is talking to his wife about AI before it was AI, before it was considered AI, or I don't know how long that term goes back. But here you have Joe Morton as Dyson saying, imagine a pilot who doesn't fall asleep, who doesn't get tired, who doesn't make mistakes, who, all of that all of that is good until you
Right.
realize the danger that is possible for self-realization and self-protection. But also, think about the dangers of a pilot that does stay out all night getting fucked up, and Denzel Washington, a flight showing up
he
fucked
fucking
up.
saved him.
Yeah,
But he saved him.
He did save him.
all the
Yeah.
all the pilots. Imagine a pilot that doesn't need to fall asleep, and then imagine all the real fucking pilots that don't have work anymore
Yeah.
because they were put out of work by the fucking machine pilot.
Mm-hmm.
This shit is always gonna end up serving fucking corporate interests. It's not gonna fucking like the Dyson. We're gonna get, if we can afford it, the Dyson fucking expensive vacuum cleaner with the fucking ball with the pivoting fucking head.
Yeah.
Like that's as good as we get the consumer good, the consumer service.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's yeah.
A couple things. So it's like, okay, the idea of it being like a cheat, I don't understand how it could be a cheat, because it's kind of like, well, you're fucking, like, you're endowing this character with these characteristics. Like, how is that a cheat?
No, I'm talking about a narrative cheat in order to gain sympathy from an audience, and like a cheat in storytelling, a cheap element, not just a cheat, but a cheap way of gaining sympathy from an audience. That's what I'm talking about.
But why, I don't understand even the concept of that being a cheat, because it's kind of like, well, if you're saying...
I'm not talking about it being there. I'm talking about it being the possibility of that.
I know, but what I'm curious about is just the idea of, like, okay, you're creating a character and you're like, I want the machine to actually be benign, or I want the machine to be, I want C-3PO to have anxiety. Like, because I want to give it that human feel, and I want to give it, you know what I mean? Like, versus like, let me see, how can I get the audience to like my android more, or cyborg, depending on what it is. I don't necessarily think that that's like, the concept of it being like a cheat, it's weird to me, because it's, you're creating a character that represents something, and if you're giving it that human feel, but it's a machine, you're creating like this ironic kind of thing. I don't think that necessarily someone is going into it as this gimmick to fucking, like, just to think about the sympathy of the character. It's just kind of like, you know, that that audiences will feel sympathy towards that character, because, I mean, it's a character that's going to ultimately sacrifice itself. So it's, I don't to frame it in terms of like, is this just a cheat? I don't even know, like, that's very strange to me to frame it that way, because it's like, well, hey, in that case, is every hero ever a fucking, like, cheat to get sympathy? Like, I don't understand.
Well, it's exactly like that. It's like, what?
You're not explaining to me what the fuck you're saying.
But what I'm saying, well, what I'm saying is,
that's like saying, like, you're going to show two people kiss on screen, and you're like, that's just a cheat.
No. I'm talking about, like, anthropomorphizing something.
People love each other, so that when one of them does die, it makes them cry.
No, what I'm talking about is, like, anthropomorphizing something in the same sense of when you have let's say you have a dog character in a film, they'll have a dog do something that doesn't come natural to a dog, that is something that a human will do. That's what I'm talking about, in order to gain, like, first of all, you don't need to add sympathy to a dog. Dogs are just wonderful. If you put a dog on the screen and, you know, you're just going to fall in love for a minute, because you know how wonderful dogs are, unless you're a fucking cunt who can't get over, you know, whatever issues you have with dogs. Dogs are wonderful. Now, the T100 in the same sense is a machine with no emotions, no feelings. What I'm saying is it a cheat to make Schwarzenegger more likable and lovable in this film after the killing, emotionless, cannot be reasoned with, can't be talked to character that he played in the first one? Is it
I just don't understand framing and I'm caught on this. What about it is, why would you describe it as a cheat?
I would call it as a cheat because you've spent the entire first movie you've spent the entire first movie creating something that is emotionless and without any kind of there's no sympathy there for this. You know, you could look at it.
Right.
You could look at it. It's not like Roy Blatty in Blade Runner, where as I watch that movie, especially as I get older, I watch Blade Runner, and I'm a hell of a lot more sympathetic to Roy Blatty as the years go by.
Yeah.
What was that? What did you say?
I said, fire your boss. The post that we
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Fire your boss. It's like, you know, you start to understand that. You don't get that with the Terminator. And granted, these are two different stories, and the cyborgs are being handled in very different ways. But there is a part of me that imagines that the T-100 eventually becomes a Roy Blatty. Okay, so in the story here, when I'm saying a cheat, I'm talking about a kind of manipulation of the storytelling to garner sympathy that was never intended in the first one. That is it, oh, this is what I need to propel my story in this film, or is it the natural evolution of AI itself and the evolution of what the potential for this technology is? So I'm not saying it's a cheat. I'm asking, is it possible that it could be a cheat? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about creating a story and a
storytelling itself is manipulation.
Yes.
I guess in that sense, storytelling itself is a cheat. So yes, it is a cheat because all of it is a cheat. Like.
Mm-hmm. But is it a fair cheat in the way? Well, I think there's a difference between a cheat and a natural evolution of storytelling, where this thing would begin to start learning and it would become the father figure that it is. I'm just wondering. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. I'm not saying that this is. Yeah, I like the way it plays in this story.
I just think that's a strange way of describing the process of creating a character, as if there are these. It's like, well, when people first see someone, let's say they see me, and I'm as I present myself in the world, I'm like serious and like quiet and to myself, okay. Mm-hmm. But then if someone gets to know me, and then I make some kind of dry joke.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh shit, like, this person, like, and there's a different side there.
Yeah.
And that happens with everyone when you get to know them. There are different layers. Is that a fucking cheat? Because I'm not consistent with the fucking first impression of like what? No, it's not a fucking cheat. It's just another element, mm-hmm. and it rounds out the character. Even though these are actually two different characters, it rounds out the impression that we have, because we know that we're looking at the first one, and it's like we're balancing it out. We're giving it a different element. Now this fucking character is the protagonist. Now he's not the protagonist, but he's helping the protagonist against the antagonist. It's like, I don't understand. Like, is that a cheat? Is it a cheat that Darth Vader started out as like a good guy, turned bad, and then ends as being like a good guy again? Because is redemption a cheat? Is this? It's to frame it as a cheat sounds very strange to me.
Well, I mean, when I refer to it as a cheat, I'm talking about like in certain. God, I wish I had an example that I could go to, but I know they exist where a character in a story betrays, which is not to say the character does it, but the writer betrays the character.
The internal logic of that character, basically.
In a weird way,
I get what you're saying.
yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's like when it stops you in your tracks as a movie watcher, and you're like, oh bullshit, he wouldn't fucking do that. He's an asshole. He wouldn't fucking no, he's not going to save that kid at that point. You know,
I get what you're saying. Okay.
You know,
yes.
So I'm just wondering that. I don't think so. I think. Because I'm wondering what the statement is being made here because I'm really interested in what James Cameron's view on artificial intelligence is. Is it something that can be controlled and manipulated for the betterment of man, or is it a danger that we are unable to overcome? Because there is a moment where the Schwarzenegger T100 says, "You're designed to destroy yourselves," or something like that, where the kid says, "We're not going to make it, are we?"
Right. Yes. Where the kids are playing with the guns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, yeah, we're fucked.
Yeah. Which
I mean, I think that's it. And it's all about, these films are all about using these dangerous tools that can either advance or destroy us. And fucking, again, like in the first one, it's like a factory. The final battle takes place in a factory. You think of a factory, and a factory is like where shit gets created, right? Yeah. That's the whole point. And here it's like machines are creating other machines, or they're creating whatever, like in a car. Like they're creating these things that are going to help us. But now it's the machines are trying to destroy humans in the thing where other machines create in that place. Here, the machine is going to be destroyed by a human by a machine, or using a machine in the place full of machines. Mm-hmm. In the second one, it's a foundry is the last place. So it's like so much of a part of our evolution is like how we would use tools from stone to bronze to iron
steel.
And etc. Right. And so I think that's the future is a black highway, I think James Cameron is saying. And it's like, it's in that sense, I mean, like if you want to, there's that element of it where it is like, we need to fucking be careful with what we're doing, because you can change the fucking future by changing the present, but you can't go back and change the fucking past, because if you you get in that loop.
Yeah.
You can say, I mean, to me, the metaphor of the film on one hand is like, of the second one is like, well, fucking, yeah, Edward Furlong is just a fucking, Edward Furlong is that latchkey fucking kid. The T-1000 is a truant officer trying to fucking catch in. His mom is trying to get home from fucking work early to fucking save him. Fucking the TV is there to fucking give him bad advice, but also a PSA, public service announcement saying like, fucking stay in school, asshole. Like, and that's all it's really about.
Is this kid watching Wally George late at night? Are you projecting a little bit too much on this fucking thing?
I think, I mean, can you not see that?
Of course I could see it. Right? Of course I could see it, yeah.
Of course. But at the same time, it's like, it is also the idea of like, well, the machine's becoming more human. Well, if the machine is becoming more human, like what's worse? Is it worse for the machine to be more machine-like, or is it worse for it to be more human? Because humans are bad enough. And like when you say, you touched on that because you said, well, you could see it becoming the more self-aware at some point they're going to want to rebel. That's assuming that the machine is going to be more like a human versus having an intelligence that is so far beyond ours that we can no longer predict its reactions, its responses, its rationale. That's something already beyond. You know what I mean?
Well, the interesting thing when the T-100 starts talking about how Judgment Day comes about, and the system bombing targets in Russia, knowing that those targets would kill us, would send. Yeah, it's how could you not be aware that would happen? That's a strategic move. If you're a general and you're going into battle, you would look at all the options of in order to win a battle, you have to know how the other side is going to play it. It's chess. It really is planning out the steps and knowing what the reactions to those steps are going to be. I watched this movie, and this movie honestly scares the shit out of me a little bit, because, and I joke about it all the time, and I talk about like when phones started taking over our lives, and people were talking about how difficult it is to do something because of what I viewed out of being, pure laziness. I said, I would always say, it's like you motherfuckers never saw Terminator 2. You don't understand, Skynet becoming self-aware. This is where we're going. This is what it is. This is a brutal and very pessimistic look at the future, but I think it's a realistic look at the future. I don't, call me a fucking moron if you want, but I watched this movie and I don't see how anything isn't really possible here. As far as technology is advancing technology over the decades are concerned. I'm not talking about right now, and I know you know that. I'm just trying to point out. I don't want people to think I'm a complete fucking moron. But
I don't think that. I think you're good.
But yeah, you know what I mean. I just leave that "but" out there. Go ahead.
Is more, I think, optimistic though than the first one.
Oh, very much so.
So despite, like, you're saying that it is bleak, but it's still like, well, no matter how crazy the fucking world may think you are, if you just try hard enough, like, you may be able to change the trajectory of the trajectory that you are on, and therefore, like, those around you are on. If you just... But, obviously it's like it takes blood, sweat, and tears type of shit, because, and it's going to take sacrifice. That's basically what it is. You're going to fucking have to, like, that's what he's saying. Because you can change, they avert disaster by doing all this shit. In the first one, it's just kind of like, oh, well, there's a fucking, with the kid who speaks horrible Spanish. It's just like, well, there's a storm coming, and like, yeah, I'm afraid so, or whatever the fuck she says, and then, she rides off. In this one, it's kind of like, well, they avoided their 90s fucking obsession with the end of the world, and the end of the fucking century, and the millennium, and all that. It's kind of like, well, Judgment Day, we averted it, apparently. But if all this shit happened to come back in time to avert it, like, how could you have averted it, right? That goes back to the other thing. But the point is that at the end of the film, like, you've averted it. You have prevented that timeline from happening. Because now Dyson is dead. All the Terminators that have gone into the comeback are gone. But it's like, and granted, I don't know anything about any of the other Terminators from then on. So I don't know. I mean, if we're going to talk about cheat, it's like, okay, how do we fucking make another movie out of this? How do we so-called cheat this? Well, you just make another scientist.
Mm-hmm.
find fucking like whatever traces of Dyson's like research, and now continues this.
It doesn't even have to be that though, because it's the natural. It's stated in the movie we're designed to produce our own inevitable destruction, and that's. You don't need a Dyson. You don't need specifically Dyson. You just need a Dyson.
Right.
The scientific desire to move technology further is always going to be there. And these guys are going to do that. They're going to push forward. They're going to try to make that a possibility, and nothing about this one man sacrificing himself or even sacrificing his work is going to stop that. They're going to continue. There are going to be other geniuses born, and they're going to come up with new and different ideas on where to take existing technology and build from there. So, I mean, the idea of like I said, you could tell this story 100 times over. As long as it's going to be profitable, they're going to keep making Terminator films. And
that's the cheat. I think that's cheap. And in that sense, it's kind of like, well, James Cameron himself is a Dyson.
Yeah.
Because he's going to continue to use the technology. And we're not talking about so-called for like the good. We're talking about he wants to tell his stories, but at the same time, I think it's also like he's part of the fucking film industrial complex. That's what it is. It's fucking like, what's going to put asses in the seats? It's going to be explosions and new technology and that stuff a lot of times puts the story and the like so-called art part, it puts that in the back seat.
Yeah.
And so it's like what's driving the fucking thing is technology itself.
Yeah.
And the film is less about what the film is about, and it's more about how the film was made. And the tools that were used to make the film.
Sure.
So in that sense, it's kind of like, that's also like a metaphor of it, is that like James Cameron is fucking, with his avatars and all this other bullshit, is using and pushing the technology into places that, all right, cool. But at the end of the day, so fucking what? Like, so what?
Yeah. So what?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hold on 1 minute, right? Hold on 1 minute.
Yeah.
What's that?
All right, you can continue. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So whereas the first one was less about, I mean, it still was of the technology that was available then, but it's I think it was, or at least seemed to be, less about the technology and more about the creating of the world and using that world to support the story that he was telling and the ideas. This one is more about kind of like more of a simple concept with a lot of action to dress it up. And so eventually I think I will check out some of these other ones to see if there's a drop off, if there's a kind of
there's a major drop off, but yeah.
How many are there?
1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Right, if I'm correct, 6. Yeah, there's 6 films. Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines is actually fun. it's a good entry. It's not to the same caliber as this, but it's a fun version. And it has one of the best chase scenes in the series with a what do you call it? It's a truck with a fucking, what is it? It's one of those wrecking balls. No, it's not a crane. It's a chase with a crane. Terminator Salvation can be skipped, which is sad because it's the Christian Bale episode. It's really bad. And then they rebooted it with Terminator Genesis with Emilia Clarke from what's that show? The Dragon Show. I can't remember. God, I'm losing my mind. And Jai White, not very good. Jai Courtney. Yeah, Game of Thrones. She plays a young Sarah Connor. It's fucking weird. And then Dark Fate is where Linda Hamilton and Schwarzenegger come back. So you can see them. Some of them are enjoyable to varying degrees, but they don't. None of the sequels reach the heights of what these two films did. You wouldn't be missing out on a whole lot to skip those other films, but just for certain set piece special effects ridiculousness, they're fun to a degree, but none of them have. Definitely all of the others seem to be money grabs, and these are the only two ones that seem to be like there is an artistic statement being made. I would argue. I would say, yeah, that watching these films, I feel like something is being said, and I'm better for having seen it. And I don't see that in the other films. So you can do what you want with that, and you know, people can write in and tell us what they think about the other films. But this was these are the good times. These are the ones that are gonna give you more return for your you know, viewing buck. That's to say.
James Cameron. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm listening.
Did he direct the other ones or just the first two?
No, he just directed the first two, and I think he had a hand in producing the last one. But I think, I mean, the fact of the matter is that Schwarzenegger was already in his 60s when he did the last one, and there comes a point when you just can't do these movies anymore. I mean, he was Mr. Olympia, and he was one of the greatest action stars of all time, but a body can only stand up to so much physical demands as these movies require. I mean, when you're watching this film, one of the crazy things about watching this film is all of the practical stunts that are involved in it. There was a moment there where a helicopter is chasing the paddy wagon that Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton are in, and they fly underneath an underpass. Can you believe how fucking difficult that would have been to do?
Yeah.
I mean, there are moments where you're just like, holy fuck. Yeah, it's insane. There's a moment where a guy, you know, drives a motorcycle out of a 4-story building at a helicopter and lands on the legs. I mean, you had to do that. They had to actually, I don't know, they probably had the helicopter suspended, but you still have to leap out of a window and do that kind of thing. There are stunts. This might be the last stunt-heavy film that was done with practical effects that we'll ever see.
What about the stuff with what's his name?
Robert Patrick?
Tom Cruise.
Well, Tom Cruise is crazy. That's a whole different thing. Tom Cruise. Yeah, you're right. Tom Cruise. But the thing about it is that there's a difference between Tom Cruise and James Cameron's film, is that Tom Cruise is doing that because he has the power and the clout of being Tom Cruise to make that happen. They're not going to allow that anymore in a film like this when they can do it CGI. Nobody has the power to make these films anymore. especially when they can just CGI it and it doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as real. But I mean, yeah, you point out Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise is an outlier. He's when they say the exception that proves the rule, Tom Cruise is that.
Sure.
But even Tom Cruise at 60 years old, I mean, there was a leap that he made in not the last Mission Impossible, but 3 Mission Impossible ago, where he leaped from one building to another and broke his ankle. I mean, that will stop a film. And you can't afford to stop a film. There's just too much money involved, and it's irresponsible filmmaking when you can get away with it other ways. I'm not saying that I don't prefer it the other way. I do. I admire Tom Cruise for having the balls that he has to do the shit that he does on screen. But those days, that level of Buster Keaton, Jackie Chan limberness and craziness no longer exists. They'll never make movies like that. And I think this is one of the last films. And it's crazy because it's a 30-year-old film. You'll never see, nobody will ever fly a helicopter through underneath a bridge like this again. It's irresponsible filmmaking at this point. So, I mean,
talk about the special effects in this one. We touched on them versus the first one, but like the liquid metal, all of that.
Well, the liquid metal thing comes out of that's all ILM. That's Industrial Light Magic, Lucas's company, and that was it's like Cameron was having a practice run with The Abyss, doing that in that film, prepping for this. Because if you remember The Abyss, that water thing, they have a liquid creature in that film. It's a good film. It's an interesting film. It's a really well-made film, but it's also the kind of film that you watch and you're like, wow, there's a lot of drama going on behind the scenes here. But none of the shit that you see in this film would be possible without what he accomplished in The Abyss. And you have Stan Winston at the peak of his powers. I mean, the work that he does in this film in creating the Terminator, and you don't see the skeletal Terminator like you do in the first film, except in a couple of those flashbacks, the scenes that open up where those endoskeletons are roaming the field and at war. But that moment where Schwarzenegger takes his arm off, or when his arm is actually ripped off of his elbow. I mean, all of that shit is Stan Winston at his very best, and all of that shit would be. They would put a green sleeve on the actor at this point and shoot it that way with a computer. Months later, all of the shit that's there, all those wires, that metal that's hanging off, that's Stan Winston. And in a weird way, I'm kind of glad that Stan Winston has passed away, because his work is no longer viable in the movie industry. Nobody's going to pay to do that anymore, because it's just not practical. That would just shoot the budget up to a ridiculous degree. There's a handful of directors, Fincher, Nolan, and Tarantino, who are able to demand certain things out of a studio. Most directors can't. That's the dog. Hold on a minute. So I guess the conclusion that I've come to is this is a film that was the beginning and the end of an era. You know what I mean? Where it ushered in a new era of special effects, but at the same time killed the special effects that have come before. The Greg Nicoteros, the Savinis, the Bottons, the Rick Bakers.
Yeah.
It's just no longer. You will never see that kind of work again. Go ahead and watch Avengers: Infinity Wars and think what it would have been with a Rick Baker behind that, with a Stan Winston. It would have been incredible. But it also would have been so ridiculously cost prohibitive that those films would have never gotten made. And what saddens me is that today's audiences will never know the power of that kid turning into a werewolf, like American Werewolf in London, or Eddie Murphy aging 60, 70 years in life, or that dinosaur, that Triceratops slowly dying in Jurassic Park. All of that shit is gone. And we're seeing the beginning of the end in 1991 with this film.
That's fucked up. That's so fucking fucked up.
Ain't it?
Where you have people who are you can name them.
Mm-hmm.
Say their names one more time. Name them.
Rob Bottin, Greg Nicotero, Tom Savini, Rick Baker, Stan Winston. Those are the ones that I know.
Yeah, right.
You know, those are the big names.
You have people that could be known versus like anonymous. Mm-hmm. And look, we're not shitting on the people who can do this shit. And they're not anonymous because they come out in the credits. But when it's mediated through some program, it's like there's something that gets lost.
Yeah.
That goes to it too, because it's kind of like, well, it's can any, like, the idea of Rob Bottin doing makeup versus Greg Nicotero doing makeup, it's a different style. Yeah. It's a different thing. If you're doing some program and I'm doing some program, we could be at computer stations side by side. And if we're using the same presets or the same fucking like filters or whatever we're doing, it's the same. The difference is like what we decide to do with it. Mm-hmm. Now, but that's going to fall under what the director wants regardless. But it loses a sense of touch.
Yeah.
That's different from, like, you could take two guitarists using the same kind of like basic equipment, but their feel is different, their tone, everything is going to be like different. Versus like, or ultimately you can just have you just put in the prompt on, like, if you're using fucking some kind of like AI software to generate an image. Now the prompts can be different, but like, what does that mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a metaphor there as well, where the humanness is getting lost. If you're going to have AI generated films and you don't need real actors, obviously, like, there's going to be a huge element that's lost.
Yeah.
Because I remember when my grandmother died, I went to see her, like, we were going to go to the hospital, but she died before we got there. So then we got the call, and then we were already, like, going to head over.
Mm-hmm.
And her eyes were like kind of open, and there was a glassiness in her eyes, and there's something there that you can tell it's not there anymore. You know, more than and it's way more subtle than the T100 or whatever. Obviously, it's a red eye, and then it just goes out, right? That's obvious. That's like, this is just something it's the life, the spark, or whatever that it goes missing, and ultimately the eyes like flatten out. But it's like that, like to see something where the human element is missing. It's just missing something.
Yeah.
And I mean, will it get to the point where we completely can't tell what's what? You know what I mean? Like, completely, in the same way that the shape-shifting in the voice of the Terminator T-1000, like, you completely can't tell what's what? Or will there be something in it that says, that movie was cool, it looked really cool, but because we can already do that, where you can see a movie, but it just depends on how much you know.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a crazy action movie or something, and you say, well, it was just missing something. It looked really cool, but it just kind of it felt like empty calories. It felt like a supersize without the, like, it didn't hit the spot. It just, I feel overstuffed. Now add the aspect of, like, everything looks so perfect. Even the flaws are added to make it look normal, but you leave the theater with a sense of
an artificiality.
You're just not satisfied somehow, or there's something missing and you can't even place it. You can't even put your finger on it. Are we going to get to that point? Is that where we're headed? You know what I mean? Like,
I think the real danger is not so much not being able to connect with something that is unreal or something about it being off. I think the real danger is when we're going to be looking at something and saying, I don't know if that's real.
Well, of course.
When you're looking at something that is real and it's like, is it real? Do I even know it's real? Where you start questioning the truth, where it's like, it's just, I think it's all dangerous. I think it's just, we're going to a bad place.
And in the sense of, like, media and how that gets politicized, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure we're going to that place. And to a certain extent we are in that place, because it's like, to what extent are people losing their ability, first of all, critical thinking to begin with?
Yeah.
So the idea of, like, well, you know, it used to be like, oh, well, I saw it on TV, so it must be real. But now it's like, fucking, my favorite influencer said it, so it must be real. Or also, you know, all this, the idea of, like, so-called, like, fake news, which itself is a term used by a fucking liar. So I don't like to use that term, because it usually means stuff that is labeled by fake news. If it's a liar, it usually means it's fucking true and it's critical of him. But that concept and the idea of, like, you know, propaganda. I mean, propaganda is fake news. And that's what gets crazy. Getting a phone call and someone saying, we have your daughter, and you hear your daughter's voice, and it's not real. It's just, you know what I mean? Or weird shit like that, where you have to come up with like code words to know if it's that really that person, and scams. That's the thing. That's like the next thing, right? Scams, politics, people being able to be framed for shit, deep fakes, revenge porn, like, you know what I mean? All this shit where it's kind of like, my friends and I joke around about this all the time, where it's like, the loss of privacy, and it's like, well, what, people not wanting for it to be exposed what kind of porn they watch, and it's like, no, like, the danger is now to be, and I've said this before, the danger is now what porn you're in, even if you're not, like, it's not what you watch, it's what you're in, even if it's by no choice of your own. So even beyond that, for people to grow up, for a generation to grow up and be like, well, that's normal. What's wrong with that? And for people to go to these kind of films, even on an entertainment level, forget cinema as like this enlightenment, as this way of like engaging with all of the arts at once in one fucking mix. Like, forget all that. Just as entertainment, for people to actually be like, no, we don't want to see actors in movies. I want to see fucking AI shit. I want to see computer generated images because they're cooler than fucking real people. I don't want to see people.
Well, that's a longer conversation, as much as, and I've enjoyed this conversation a great deal, and this is exactly what I thought this is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. It went into different directions, but this is a conversation that needs to be continued after watching Kubrick's AI realized by Spielberg. We need to talk about Deus Ex Machina. We need to go back to Frankenstein. We need to talk about the history of this and what it actually means. That's the great thing about this movie, is that, it's entertainment, it's Disneyland, and it's a lot of fun. But these two movies, this idea, this story, spurs both curiosity, fear, and wonderment. And I think it's a testament that 30 years later, 35, almost 40 years later after the original film, 40 years later after the original film, all of the points are still relevant. And the fact that we don't take it as seriously as we should is to our detriment. So, I'm looking forward to going deeper into this after we see those movies. So, I don't know if you have more to say. I just, that's what I think. That's my personal opinion. This has been fun.
Yeah. I mean, not only do we need to watch out for the fucking cyborgs out there, but like, we need to beware that we ourselves do not become fucking cyborgs. So disconnect and buy us coffee. Buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. That's buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This episode goes to Esai. Thanks for your contribution. Very generous. This one's for you. Beware, beware, beware. All of you, beware. Till next time.